Welcome to today's podcast. My guest today is Karen Wheatley. How are you doing today?
Oh, great. How are you?
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So happy you are here today. I'm just going to start off by sharing a little bit about you to our listeners so we have a background. So Karen was born and raised on a dairy farm in northeastern Maryland. Karen was involved in all things 4-H growing up, from showing cattle at their fairs to competing in quiz bowl contests and judging. After graduation from the University of Delaware with a degree in animal science, she spent the next decades working in the ag industry, in communications, magazine publications, and most recently in AI. She and her husband, Mike, own Black Eyed Susan Cattle Company, which includes both registered Hereford and Simmental cattle and sheep business. They have two grown children who are also both actively employed and loving the ag industry. So welcome, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm excited for our conversation today because we kind of both have a love of ag. I never really grew up on a farm, but I loved going to my uncle's farms. They had dairy cattle, they had pigs, they had row crops and pastures, you name it, they pretty much had it. The bottle feeding the calves was my favorite thing when I was there. But when I grew up, graduated from college, I married a farmer and we produce corn and soybeans, but no cattle. But we rent out our stocks to those that do. So my kids love seeing the cattle around our house as well. So I love the country life and all the life lessons and the hard work that is required to live off the land with so many variables out of our control. So I'm going to start our conversation today. You mentioned that after college, you had spent the next decades of your life in the ag industry, and it sounded like in a various different roles. Can you tell us and the listeners a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I I feel like I should be a self-proclaimed gypsy because I have lived in 8 different states since I graduated
Oh,
from
wow.
college, and I feel like that time of my life was like so awesome, just because I moved to states where I didn't know people. I moved to states where I did know people. I tried jobs that I didn't think I'd like. I tried jobs just because what I was doing at that present time was not working anymore, or I needed a change. And I thought, well, yeah, why not? Let's just go try something. And so I feel like my exploration of ag was so varied and not anything like what I thought when I went to college. And so moving around and spending close to, well, I graduated in a long time ago.
Yeah, we don't want to date ourselves right now.
But I've spent, almost well, 3 full decades yeah, since then just embracing all of ag. And I feel so strongly about the industry. Like I don't ever want to be not employed by the ag industry,
Mhm.
because I feel like it's so important to produce food for this nation and in all of its forms. And so I will always be involved in that aspect of it.
The life experiences you had lived in various different states, different jobs. Like, what did you learn from those experiences?
um, I I feel like I learned to believe in myself. And I know that sounds really foo-foo, and some people
No,
are like,
no,
"Oh
no. I mean,
my gosh."
we have to like explore something, right? To be
Right,
able to
right.
like, wow, can we do this or not?
Right, and so I think, when I first got out of college, I played it safe. I had done an internship in California the summer before I graduated, and it was an awesome experience, and that company actually offered me a full-time job when I got done with school, and I accepted, and then 2 weeks later, I'm like, no. No, thank you. I'm sorry, but no thanks." I was just so afraid to step out on my own, and so I would say the first few years after college, I played it safe. My dad said if we ever wanted to return to the family farm, we had to go and work for someone else for 2 years
Yep.
minimum, so we learned how to work for other people.
Right.
And so my first 2 years, I went and worked in the chicken industry and, learned what that was all about, and that was
Mhm.
fascinating, and just wasn't for me growing up with dairy cattle.
Mhm.
I'm a large animal species kind of
Yep.
person,
Yep.
and so, but I did that, and then I found another job close to home and, sort of spent those first few years, just kind of getting my feet under me, and
Mhm,
this is the
mhm,
work world and this is how
mhm.
we operate.
Yep.
But then I got to the point where I had gone through some personal relationship things. We've all been through them, where you're
Mhm.
like, I just got to get away.
Yep.
And I just packed up and moved to Wisconsin. And I knew some people,
Mhm,
but didn't have any experience with the area, didn't have any, it's one of
mhm.
those things where you have to find a new bank, a new hairdresser, a new doctor, a new dentist,
Yep.
all these things that you never think about. And I did it. And I was like, okay, well, this is great. And some of them were better than what I was used to, some of them were
Mhm.
worse, and you kind of go
Yep.
through this whole thing of standing on your own 2 feet. And I noticed when I came back home for Christmas that first year after I had moved, I felt different. I felt like I was coming in as a guest, and
Mm,
that my life had taken on meaning somewhere else. And
mhm.
that was cool too. Like, it's your first taste of independence. And
Right.
so that just kind of catapulted. And then I moved to New York, and I moved to California again, and I moved to Washington State. And every time I kind of started over and reestablished who I was, what I wanted out of life, and it's kind of nice, when you're
Mhm.
moving to a place you've never lived before. It is a blank slate, and
Right.
you learn so many painful life lessons along the way, and you think, "Wow, I've been gifted with this chance to actually say I can start over."
Mhm.
And here I am right back where I started.
But there's so much that you've learned in between, and I think a lot of
Yeah,
us have some of those same kind of feelings, like you talked about, "Oh, I just wanna be really independent and branch
right,
out on your own," and I find that kind of interesting because I call that adulting in my house. My oldest just got married this summer, so then there was this new, like, "Oh, I gotta, like, get a new Social Security card, and, like, we
right.
we gotta find a bank together," and, all the like you said, all these new things, like, you move to a new place and, like, "What do I do?" All these it's new, right?
And
And
it's so much more than the job.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Like, you get to choose.
Right. It's, new churches, new circles
Mhm.
of friends. How do you make friends?
Right,
It is a lot more than just the work itself.
right, right. And s
But it made me all those things kind of made me come back eventually, and come back and build a house on the very farm that I grew up on,
right.
as a different person. And I hope, I would love to say, a better person,
Mhm.
you
Well,
know.
yeah, like, your experience of coming home after being in Wisconsin for a year and coming home and just, like, you feel different.
Right.
So what do you contribute to that? Besides, yes, moving out on your own and stuff, but what did you learn? And you talked about believing in yourself.
Mhm.
What did you believe now about yourself during those different moves and then coming back home? Like, how did you come back? What did you
Yeah.
learn? I mean, I'm throwing a bunch at you, so
Yeah.
take whatever you want out of it and enlighten us a little bit.
Well, I can only say how it affected me,
Mhm.
but I think one of the biggest things was that I realized, and some of it seems so common sense, but when you grow up in a small town like I did, and this is my whole life, and I went to college 15 minutes from my house, but I
Wow.
lived there, so I thought
Yeah.
that was really, graduating. And um, but when you move to another state, you realize that um, what's normal for you is not normal for them.
Mm.
And so I think it helped me become a better wife, because when Mike and I got married, we were college sweethearts. We didn't get married until 6 years ago. And so we had a lot of life in between then.
Mhm.
But when you come into that relationship and you know that someone else thinks of things differently than you do, and their sense of normal is different because you've lived it, uh, I think it makes you a better person, makes you more appreciative of, hey, it's not always about me. It's not always about my perspective from this small town. It could
Mhm.
be my perspective as living in Wisconsin. And now I should be a Green Bay Packers fan. And I should, and this is what we do on church after Sundays. We all go out to eat and watch the Packers game. It
Mhm.
just kind of made me think, at the very same time, my family is doing what they've always done on a Sunday after church.
Uh-huh.
But yet this is going on simultaneously, and this is how life is. And when I moved to California, completely different again. Um, I love that. Like,
Mhm.
I just think that we get such a narrow focus of how the world revolves, and it almost feels to me sometimes it's really selfish. Like, well, this is how I view the world. And
Yeah. And everybody else does too, right?
yeah, right. So I feel like that that really made me stop and think, like, when I my last move before I came back home, I lived in Washington State, and I loved it because everyone was very laid back. They spent 90% of the year outside because the weather wasn't terrible.
Mhm,
So they were really active, very, summers weren't humid.
mhm.
Um, and they were just always on the go, always outside. And
Yeah.
I thought, man, I don't want to lose this. I love this about me, that I'm hiking and I'm mountain climbing and I'm doing all these things. And I moved back to Maryland and it's hot and it's humid and it's miserable in the summertime. And the first year or two that I moved back, I was pretty cantankerous. Like, I was, like, not nice in the summertime, and all I was doing was complaining about how it wasn't Washington, and so it took me a while to say, "Hey, guess what? This is the stage of your life that you're at right
Mhm,
now,
mhm.
and you need to readjust yourself and readjust your attitude and, and think, what are you thankful for?
Right.
Okay, we're living next door to my mom and dad. We get to take care of them. We get to take care of these animals. We get to farm this ground that is still here, even though we're
Mhm.
being kind of closed in on by Baltimore and Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that taught me you need self introspection or whatever you want to
Mhm.
call it.
Right,
You
right.
need to examine yourself, but not to the point where you lose track of what's going on around you or where you're at that time.
Your experiences from a different parts of the United States, different cultures, different environmental, whether it's hot, cold, or humid,
Right.
hot, can all bring in some different perspectives
Mhm.
that can kind of like sneak in on us once in a while because we kind of want to stay in our own little heads sometimes. There's times where our thoughts just kind of like, okay, stop. Like we really have to check our thoughts out and like, okay, is there a different way to think about it? And I think about, oh, well, okay, how would I be thinking about this if I lived in Washington? Think about this when I lived in California. What are we grateful for? And that's a real centering thing, I believe. And that
Mhm.
is so important for us to remember to think one is there's other perspectives out there. And two, we gotta check our thoughts once in a while, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Check in with
And not
ourselves.
and not let the fear of different be limiting,
Yeah.
because I feel like when I was growing up, everything was very black and white. And
Mhm,
um the further west I moved, the more I realized, man, we're all coming from different places and we
mhm,
have different values and ideas, and we have different skin color, we have different traditions, and
mhm,
some of them are so cool. Like, I just loved it. And so and when I came back, unfortunately, I felt the black and white this is
mhm,
this is the way things are done. And that was a struggle. And
mhm,
it's still kind of a struggle, and I don't know if that's generational or if that's just the way I perceive things to be around here. It just
mhm.
I don't know. I still work on that.
Yeah.
But Washington and California are two states that have just blended so many different cultures.
Mhm,
And my
mhm,
niece now lives in Seattle, and I know she loves it, for the
mhm.
same reasons. It's just so laid back and accepting.
Yeah. How can we bring a little bit of that to where we're at? And
Right.
if it can't go past our the walls of our house because there's so much traditional thinking outside those walls, how do we invite people into our world with that?
Mhm.
And is there anything are there any questions you ask yourself to when you kind of come across, oh, getting stuck in the black and white or opening to new perspectives? Is there anything that you ask yourself to when you come into contact with that?
I feel like what my husband and I have chosen to do, produce food for people
Yeah.
to eat, is like the unifying.
Mhm.
I don't know. And you're the same way.
Yep.
You're producing corn and beans. It
Mhm.
feeds this nation,
Mhm.
and there's nothing more universal than food.
Mhm.
No matter how you prepare it, no matter how you cook it, no matter what you do with it or your traditions
Mhm.
with it. And I feel like that has been a really easy way for us to just go across all lines and
Mhm.
parties and everything.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
here to feed. We're here to feed.
Yeah. We're here to feed not only this nation, but the world because some of it
Right.
gets exported, right? Yeah, that is a universal. We all need to eat, and we
Mhm,
love to eat. We can find a commonality
mhm,
where we can start from.
mhm. Yep.
And how you prepare that food can be a different topic, right? Because
Well,
there's
how you even grow
yeah,
that food, I
yeah.
mean, that we've come across a lot of people that are like, "Oh, how can you take the life of something that you've raised?"
Mhm.
Because I know that we've raised that animal with the greatest
Oh,
amount of love and respect,
oh,
and
yeah.
we love them, and it's not easy for us to do either, like, we don't wanna send them off,
Right.
but at the same time, I firmly believe that they're there to serve a purpose, and
Mhm.
if we can be the ones that help them have a great life until they fulfill that purpose of being on our plate,
Right, right?
yeah, I wanna do it. I wanna do it. I don't wanna leave that to someone else to do.
Yeah, and I think about that too, when we raise things with all of our heart and soul into it, like
Mhm.
how much better that food is.
Yes.
Just like that steak is gonna be so much more yummy and tender and delicious than if it was just something that was, don't really care
Processed.
for. Yeah,
Yeah.
processed. And
Yeah.
so it just nourishes us so much more. We can take in that love, we can take in that tenderness from, somebody's hard work and values. And it's a connecting piece that we have.
It's
Have you
kinda
ever
like,
asked
they say I'm sorry, I keep
Oh,
talking.
no, we talk this is our conversation. We talk over each other all the time, right? This is what happens.
But I always feel like the wine industry has done such a great job of saying there's a story in the bottle. You
Mm,
can taste
yeah,
where it came from, you can taste the history of the Italian countryside, and they do this great thing, and I wish we could put that on the back of a package of beef
oh,
or
yeah,
lamb. You can taste the dewy atmosphere of a Maryland summer. But, I mean, I feel like it's the same thing. You can taste that animal has never been stressed, that they've eaten all
yes,
wholesome feed and, so on and so forth. And so I feel like if we could ever capitalize on what the wine industry has done so
mhm,
well
yes,
and telling that story that it could change the way people perceive food.
yeah, yeah, because there's always a story
Mhm,
to our lives
mhm.
and the lives of what we do, with others and how we get there. How do you make it into more of a story? Because we have a tendency to love those things, right? We love a good storyline, whether it's a movie, whether it's a book, whether it's just even a comic strip.
And we've lost storytelling. Like we really have lost that art. And
Yes, yeah, we've been made it kinda really, commercialized, like, it has to be so flashy now, but
tell
no,
it to
let it
me in
go.
like 5 seconds on this phone,
Yeah, yeah, like, okay, and how do you tell a good story with that? You
Mm,
can't tell the whole complete story, and so
no.
that's really interesting. How can we not only the food that we produce, tell a good story about how, it comes about and the love and the hard work that gets put into it, but the other aspects of our lives, because what if we didn't do
Mhm.
this? Have you ever thought about
Right.
that?
Well, yeah, all the time. When you're dating, when you're, applying for a job, whatever you're doing, you have to sell yourself, you have to tell the story of who you
Mhm.
are to
Yeah.
make that other person have even a flicker of interest, like, "Oh, I wonder what else is behind them."
Mhm.
And I think we underestimate the power of that, and we just wanna rush through things, we wanna just, "Well, no one cares, no one
Mhm.
needs to hear all the stories of where you lived out west or blah, blah, blah."
Mhm.
But it really does define who you are, and I
Mhm.
think we underestimate the fact that people do wanna hear stories, and I think it's really intrinsic, like, to carry on any kind of tradition that we have,
Mhm.
and we
Mhm.
always you see those movies where the grandfather is talking to the grandchild and telling them about the good old days, and
Yeah.
we've kinda lost that
Yeah.
sense, and I feel like kids still wanna hear those stories.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because they're curious,
Oh, yeah.
because they're and that leads it circles all back around to why I've lived in 8 states,
Oh, yeah.
because I'm curious. I wanna know.
Yeah.
And I think that we can do that no matter what we do, whether we work in ag, whether we work in nursing, whether we work
Mhm.
in school, there's stories. Everyone has great stories.
Oh, yeah, they do. And I think the curiosity piece is kinda like digging, like, what's behind that? What's behind those traditions? In a simple sense, I was like, when my kids ask me a question, "What's behind that?" Because it's not actually the question that you really want, but do you feel that same sense? It's like what we project out to the world, like sometimes there's more to it.
Mhm.
Like we want to see the headlines, but to really understand things, we have to kind of know what's behind there. And that's the story piece.
Right. Well, you and I share a friend, Jamie,
Mhm,
and she introduced me to an online teacher. His name is Chad Littlefield, and he said the best thing is to get the second question.
mhm.
That's when you really get the story because we all go into meeting somebody and we're like, "Hi, how are you? What do you do?" And then it just turns into, you know, statements like, "Well,
Yeah.
this is what I do. This is where I travel. This is what I
Mhm.
enjoy,"
Mhm.
instead of saying, "Well, tell me more about that. What do you do?" Turning it into a second question because that's
Mhm.
when you really get the gold from people. And I
Yes.
think it would surprise people too if we ask them another question rather than just shutting down. Because we all have that canned 30-second elevator speech.
Right.
"Hi, I'm
Right.
Karen Wheatley. I work for Premier Select Sires at, da 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 da."
Yeah, we do. And then it's kinda like, "Oh, yeah, we've already heard that," kinda like
Right.
we're kinda conditioned to hear that,
Mhm.
but we're not conditioning ourselves to ask that next question that digs a little bit deeper, that
Right.
brings out the curiosity and can bring out a little bit more of maybe sometimes the struggles, because life lessons are always in the stories that are
Mhm.
underneath, or that second question, or that a little bit more curious about
And
that.
they're common too.
Oh,
Everybody has them. I think we feel like, "Oh, if I don't tell anyone, no one will know that I struggled."
a lot of people learn the most from like the struggles that we've had. And I know I have. And if we don't, you know, one, like acknowledge them, and two, share them, how are we going to learn?
You're exactly right. And have you ever met a child that hasn't asked that tough question? If you said, you kind of gloss over a conversation and say, "Well, that just made me sad." And a child will say, "Why? Why
Mhm,
did it make you sad?" And I feel like we need a little bit more of that in our journey through life.
mhm,
Why did that happen? What did you learn from that?
mhm.
Or, I really honestly feel like that second question, I don't know why I hadn't thought about it before, but that second question really does make you stop and
Yeah.
dive into something deeper. And every time that I've opened up about something that has been painful, or I think, I really don't know if I should share that, every time whoever I've been talking to has either said, "I've gone through the same thing,"
Mhm.
or, "I have a friend who's gone through the same thing."
Right.
Like, it's never been like, "Wow, weirdo."
No, but I think we all can relate.
Right,
Right? And
right.
and it feels, I mean, when I've kinda like, grasped something that I can relate to somebody with. I mean, I've been a mental health counselor. I ended it last year, but I did it for over 20 years, and there
Wow.
was so many stories
Mhm.
that, people could open up about. That's like, "Oh my gosh, I can so relate,"
Right.
and I feel like people don't realize we relate as much as we do, because we try to hide the struggles and the
Mhm.
pain and stuff, but if we do that, we lose the opportunity to teach somebody the resilience of how to work through something.
Right. And be there to help them
Yeah.
if we can. And it goes back to that whole, it all circles around
Yeah.
curiosity and, kind of working through those lines of
Mhm.
what you thought your life was gonna be when you were 12 versus what it is when you're,
Mhm.
over 12.
Right, right. Boy, that's a different perspective, isn't it?
But yeah, I mean, I can share, like, I will totally share, I hope this is okay, but I
Yeah.
went through breast cancer last year,
Oh, wow.
and totally unexpected, totally out of the blue, but my doctors caught it very early, and
Mhm.
as soon as I let some people in to help me,
Mhm.
boom, it was just like, "Oh, we're gonna get you through this." The fear went away, you
Yeah.
know, and the best part, well, there's 2 great parts. One, it's gone, that's amazing,
Yes.
but there have been 2 other people since that time that had the very same thing I had, and for whatever reason, we were talking and it popped out, they're like, "Wow,
Yeah.
I can't really focus right now because I'm going through this."
Mhm.
"Hey, guess what? I just went through that," and so, I think it's kinda neat the way life works that way.
Mhm. Well, it's just so inspiring too.
Mhm,
When
mhm.
we're not just alone. We're in this
Right,
together,
right.
right? And what if we didn't open up about it? we're suffering by ourselves. We're not allowing them to share their gifts. We're
Mhm.
not allowing others to really do what we like to do, uh, help others.
Right, and it goes back to it still ties back into, what if we didn't help each other by producing food for
Yes.
the nation and the world? What if we didn't go take those chances and move to different states? We never would have met I never would have met Jamie, who
Mhm,
introduced me to you, so we
mhm.
wouldn't be sitting right here.
Right, right. I would have no
Right?
idea who Karen
I
Wheatley is. Like,
But, I mean, you've really that is a kinda cool thing to look back on your life and see all the lines that connect
mhm.
and how you can kinda keep the circle going.
I know, and it's so wonderful because everybody can do it. Like,
Mhm.
everybody can
Right.
open up and they can explore, they can have that curiosity mindset that can go, "Well, what if I do this? What if I do that?" But we have to self-reflect. We have to reflect back and kind of like, "Oh, wow, if I wouldn't have done this, then this wouldn't have happened. If I
Mhm.
wouldn't have done this, then I wouldn't have met this person and this person and this person. If I wouldn't have known Jamie through another person, I wouldn't have maybe had the courage or to start a podcast,
Right.
and then
Right.
start interviewing more people that I just feel are so fascinating because people in itself are fascinating. Everybody
Mhm.
has a story, and I love to hear the different connections, and I
Right.
love to hear the different learnings that people have over their experiences and to share
Right.
them with others. So, and just and everything, everybody can transform somebody else's life. Oh,
Everybody has a story. Everybody
yeah.
has a story. And yeah, I said earlier that I spent the first 2 summers being miserable because I wasn't where I was supposed to be. And, now I look back and I think, wow, with my husband and I starting our own cattle and sheep business,
Mhm.
we are in a great spot between Baltimore and Philadelphia and New York. We
Yeah.
have more market here than I ever would have had in Washington. And so I think it also,
Yeah.
like when you said self-reflection, you are the writer of your own story
Mhm.
and you can choose to spend the next 20 years being miserable because you're now back in Maryland instead of living in beautiful Washington. And or you can say, wow, this stage of my life means I'm here and I'm doing this right now, and how
Mhm.
cool is that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's the other thing that I just have learned, the whole bloom where you were planted. My
Yeah.
mother always used to tell me that, and I would roll my eyes like, "Ah, you don't understand." But
Yeah.
it's true, it's
It
true.
is true. It is
Yeah.
true. And sometimes, yeah, you can bloom where you're planted, but too, you can bloom with those ideals that you have grown up with
Yeah.
and plant yourself somewhere else and make that area really beautiful. But it's all about kind of our mindset, isn't it?
Mhm. Mhm.
About how we want to view something.
Right. And I really I don't know where it came from because I my family is as a whole very on the quieter side. So I've definitely been I was the youngest child, the only girl, definitely the one that did not do things the way my brothers did before me. But I just thought, why do people ever say no to something? Why do they
Mm,
ever say no?
yeah,
Because of fear, because of
right,
change.
right.
And I just love the fact that we have that power to not say we can say yes to stuff that still to this day, we live in a great country where we have all
Right.
kinds of opportunities.
Mhm.
Get over yourself and get on with it.
Right.
I feel like sometimes I can spend way too much time and reading all the books, listening to all the podcasts,
Mhm.
telling me how I should conduct the life of my dreams.
Right.
Like at some point, you have to just cut bait and do it and take that
Yeah,
first step and say, yes, I'm going to move, or I'm going to change my job,
right.
or I want to cut my hair, or even something that simple that
Yes, yeah.
says it's gonna be a new identity because my hair was longer like yours, and I thought, "I don't know, I'm in my 50s now, I'm gonna cut my hair." I think why would you say no?
Mhm. Right. And so we can say yes to opportunities,
Mhm,
right? We don't have to say no to them.
correct.
We can say yes to those opportunities to do something different. Cut your hair, put on a new identity, see how it feels.
Yeah,
Might take a few months to grow back.
it will, yeah.
you know, guys, they cut their hair all the time and when they have short hair and it grows back in like a couple of weeks. It's like they have to, you know, like mine takes forever, it seems
I
like.
know.
You know, when you go from like nothing to this, it takes a
Yeah,
while.
it
But
does.
we switch clothes. We can put on, you know, a different shirt and it makes us feel so we got to try on different things. Well, let's go back to food. Try some different spices, right? Try to make up
Right.
something else. I love it when my kids come home because they always have these new recipes.
We started raising sheep 2 years ago, and people are like, "Well, do you eat a lot of lamb?" Well, we started to. That was for what first got me
Oh, okay.
interested in it,
Yeah.
is we had really good lamb chops, and it's the same thing. Why would you say no to something?
Right.
We have so many and if you don't like something, if you don't like a state that you moved to, if you don't like a direction you've taken, there's no person behind you going, "Nope, you can't turn around, you cannot go back." There's no one there saying that. You can totally switch it up.
Yeah. Just think of your life as like, you know, you're traveling down a road, right? There are exits everywhere. You know, like
Yes,
you don't
yes,
like get off for a little while. Like
right,
it's too fast, go down something, find something a little slower. And that gets to be too slow. Maybe you go into a dead end, maybe it doesn't work out, turn around. Like
right.
go find another road. And that's what we can do with our life. Right?
Mhm.
We have the choices. We have endless choices to make with our lives. So
Yeah.
this has been great. This has been a great conversation. And
It
you know,
has.
I love just having open conversations because you never know where it's going to go.
Right, and we haven't talked in so long, that it was just good to catch up and
Yeah,
just
yeah,
yeah. Just
awesome.
catch up on
But
life.
we need to do that more often. We
Mhm.
need to do that more often with other people around us. We might see them in the community a lot, but you know, ask the second or third question, right?
Right,
Let's
right.
challenge people to ask 2, 3 questions, to dig a little
Mhm.
deeper, get a little curious. So
Yeah.
as we wrap up today, can you leave our listeners just like maybe an idea or a thought or something that you want to have them take away from today's conversation or just in general?
To let yes be your answer more so than no,
Mhm.
and to actually start something. Whether we go back to the fear thing,
Mhm.
everybody's afraid of failure, of looking stupid in front of other people, or, whatever.
Mhm.
I have no idea what people have said on the outside about my life to date. All I know is I'm really glad that I own it, and
Yeah.
it's brought me to a great place. And so you can listen to other people or you can listen to yourself. And if yourself says, okay, enough reading, enough
Mhm.
education, enough knowledge in, go do something out and make the world a better place, do it.
Do it. Just do it.
Just do
Say
it.
yes more often. That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today, Karen. I
Thanks
so
for having
appreciate
me.
Oh, I loved it. Go out and follow Karen. Check out Black Eyed Susan Cattle Company on Facebook. Just see
Mm.
the beautiful cattle that they're raising and the wonderful things that you are doing there in your cattle and your sheep company. So thank you again.
Thank you.